We're using AI to develop better weapons technology. Talk to anyone at DARPA. Are we using AI to develop better weapons? Hell yes, we are. Everyone is. So they're going to use them for bioweapons and attacks and in brand new ways of killing us that we can't even imagine today. And yet we treat AI like, it's do whatever you want. AI should be treated like it is. It's a weapon of mass destruction. You should only be doing it in a government-controlled facility that's offline, can't be released to the outside, and we should not be rushing to treat AI like it's just any other new technology. Oh, this is just like the internet. It'll hurt some jobs, but that's the nature of progression. This is the nature of killing off most of us, most humans. That's what AI is all about.
Where we engage with the innovators shaping our world. I'm your host, Nicole, and today we have an exceptional guest. Dr. Drew Miller is a retired Air Force colonel, former intelligence officer, and the founder of Fortitude Ranch, a pioneering community focused on preparedness and sustainable living. With a PhD from Harvard and decades of experience in national security, Dr. Miller is at the forefront of addressing urgent global threats, including the misuse of artificial intelligence. He's here to share his insights on AI, blockchain, cryptocurrency, and how they intersect with communities' resilience. Dr. Miller, it's an absolute honor to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Nicole. It's an honor to be on your show.
Thank you. Let's begin by talking about your background. You've had a remarkable career in the military and intelligence before founding Fortitude Ranch. What inspired you to create this unique community?
Well, it's really two things. The first is threat awareness. As an intelligence officer, I'm aware of the threats, and there was a huge misperception, especially in the United States when the Soviet Union fell. We assumed that, we can have a peace dividend, the risks of war are over, it's going to be a very nice future for us. And I and others, in the military and the intelligence community knew that that was absolutely nonsense. And the major reason is because of new technologies that are constantly coming out. Bioengineering is one that has concerned me the most, but artificial intelligence is now probably surpassing, and unfortunately will join with bioengineering to develop a threat of just absolutely horrible, lethal, highly contagious new viruses that are going to be released against us, and many other threats we can't imagine and I hope to talk about. But the other thing that inspired me to create Fortitude Ranch, we're the nation's largest survival community, is that you don't have to look at prepping for long to conclude that you can't make it on your own. The lone wolf is going to be an early casualty in a severe collapse. I'm not talking about, there's a power outage for a week. I'm talking about there's an EMP attack or a solar flare event that destroys most of our electric grid, which means we have no power, not for days or weeks, but years of no power, meaning no economic production, no municipal water systems. You aren't going to survive that unless you have a lot of people, a really well-prepared facility, you can raise food, ranch animals, and that's what we got at Fortitude Ranch.
Fascinating how your national security experience led you to focus on community preparedness. For those unfamiliar, can you explain what Fortitude Ranch is and what sets it apart from other communities?
Sure. Well, there's two things. First of all, survival communities have been around for a long time, and they've always been voluntary. People get together and recognize the threat, and you get friends and family, and people pitch in money. You start a survival community. And I looked at that initially, finding one. The problem is they usually don't last long. They fall apart because, who's in charge? What happens when, Nicole decides, hey, I'm not going to pay my dues because, it's troublesome for me now. It just doesn't work. Voluntary survival communities are a great idea. Some of them work, most of them fall apart. So then I came up with the idea, well, why don't I form a business to do it? And we use the country club model. There's an upfront fee to join and then quarterly dues. And we have members, we have professional staff. That's the uniform I'm wearing here today. Most of us are former military, so we've got the expertise. And we've got just really good facilities, but they're affordable because, we have hundreds of members at each facility. So it makes it affordable. And more importantly, it makes it a lot more effective. The problem with the collapse is not just, hey, there's no electricity, there's no water sources, there's no food. The bigger problem is marauders, people who are starving to death. And you don't want to starve to death. You're going to go out and steal food. People will kill for it. So marauder groups will form. I used to have trouble explaining that to people. I don't in recent years because of that Walking Dead show. And I had members for years told me, Drew, you got to watch this Walking Dead. And I said, no, I'm not going to watch a stupid zombie show. I've got real threats. I don't need to make them up with zombies. And they kept coming back and said, Drew, it's not about the zombies. It's about the bad people, the marauders. That's what that show describes. And unfortunately, that show, I think, is fairly accurate in what's going to happen with starving people and how marauder groups will form. So a lot of preppers, most preppers today still think that, hey, I'm just going to go to some rural area and my family or maybe a small group of us will survive. We think you need 50 people minimum to keep enough guards up to defend the collapse. So survival community is vital to make the model work. We formed a business, Fortitude Ranch. And then the second thing we do differently is, again, on this country club model, we're not just a survival community. In good times, now you can visit Fortitude Ranch, and we've got a network. We've got 8 locations. One's opening up in Maine now. We've got 8 locations across the U.S., and you can go there to vacation. So in good times, we're a recreational and vacation facility. You can come there. We're in nice remote areas. I'm in Colorado. Our location here is in the mountains of Colorado. If you go up north in Wisconsin, we're a lakefront property. You know, it's just really, really nice places, usually in forests. Nevada's an exception. We're a high mountain desert oasis there. But you can go there on vacation, stay for free up to 2 weeks a year for a member. And some people join for the recreational benefits, but largely people join because when, I don't know if I'll get bleeped on this. As on Fox News, I got bleeped when I say this. The prepper term is when the shit hits the fan. That is our official term, SHTF. When the shit hits the fan, we turn into a survival community.
Fortitude Ranch offers a comprehensive approach to resilience from what it sounds like you just provided. How did you become interested in the technologies like AI, blockchain, and cryptocurrency? And how do they connect to Fortitude Ranch's mission?
Well, the Bitcoin and the crypto, the blockchain one is kind of unusual. The AI one is an obvious one. AI is fast becoming the greatest threat we face today, and I hope I'll get back to that later because it's not the threat that people are commonly talking about. It's a much worse immediate threat than the threat of future robots. But the reason we got into blockchain is that we were trying to raise funds. And so there was the ICO craze, initial coin offering phase craze, 1970, 1918. And so we launched an initial coin offering, created the Fortitude token, and launched it to raise funds to expand Fortitude Ranch. And this is not a cryptocurrency. It is a utility token, meaning it has real value and use. So if you buy a Fortitude, and lots of people have, you can use these to buy membership in Fortitude Ranch. So we have 2 tables. Here's the dollar price to join Fortitude Ranch, depending on your type of room, how many people, how long your membership is. And then there's a token price, and our token price will never change. It's fixed, and you can use Fortitude tokens. And the other advantage of Fortitude tokens is you have priority in joining. So when 60 Minutes does an honest show on H5N1 virus and the mutations going on, and I will tell you, the Center for Disease Control is absolutely lying to people. They continue to say H5N1 is a low risk. That is complete, utterly wrong, dead wrong. H5N1 is inevitably going to either naturally mutate or be deliberately bioengineered into a human contagious virus. Historically, it's been 60% lethal, a bioengineered virus, maybe more, maybe less, we don't know. But the former CDC director, who's not in office today and is not subjected to political constraints and could be honest, says that, yeah, we're going to have an H5N1 pandemic. It's going to be horrible. He thinks it will likely be bioengineered, not a natural mutation. I do too. And when that happens, it's game over. Most people will die from that. Not directly from the virus necessarily. They're going to die because when any bad disaster happens, people aren't going to work. Nicole, would you be here today coming into work if there was an even 10% lethal virus spreading? No, you'd be at home or you'd be in your survival location. So no one goes to work. That means no food deliveries. That means even if there's electricity for the municipal water system, it'll eventually shut down. You'll die in big cities. You're going to have to get out of them, and the collapse just starts. Law and order vanishes. People don't go to work, and it's a Walking Dead type situation, trying to survive.
Wow, that is extremely scary. That scenario and everything that you just explained. It's Interesting how technology, though, is enhancing communities' resilience. You've expressed that AI threat is wrongly presented in the media and is dangerously misleading. Can you elaborate on why you believe that is the case?
Sure. Well, first thing I want to mention is we've entered the age of collapse, and I have a slide I can send you on that.
Mm.
But it's new technologies is one of the leading drivers, but there are other problems. We're a highly interdependent economy. Any disruption anywhere and things stop working. We have people that here are not resilient. We know how to raise food and use hammers and do basic growing Jerusalem artichoke and crops and taking care of chickens and sheep and goats and all that. Most Americans don't and don't necessarily do that. So we're a less resilient people. We're a more vulnerable economy and a lot more technologies that can be used to kill people. And that's kind of the situation today. Is it used to take an Attila the Hun with an army of hundreds of thousands. Nowadays, with new technologies, a single individual can shut down an economy, trigger a collapse. Lots of ways to do it. AI is by far the worst that we face today, and the reason is not what people talk about. AGI, aware computers, bad robots. People keep talking about that. That's 80% of the AI threat coverage, and they're saying it's a future threat, and they're absolutely wrong on this. It could be a future threat that I think will have a collapse, probably one facilitated by AI long before then, because the threat of AI today is bad people using AI. So artificial intelligence is being widely used to develop new drugs and medicines. It's also being used by bad people, North Korea, terrorist gangs, even a Unabomber type individual. A biologist, for example, is concerned about our overpopulated planet and global warming and destruction of species. A biologist there's probably one, maybe several of them out there, using bioengineering, CRISPR technology, and now artificial intelligence to develop better means to develop a deadly new virus that's highly transmissible, highly lethal to kill off humans. And people know about this. I mean, this is all over the place. The news about, Peter Thiel, for example, has a survival place in Australia. Zuckerberg has a huge survival facility in Hawaii. The top AI executives are aware of it. But, good people, good AI people, founders like Geoffrey Hinton, they've said that this is an extinction threat, artificial intelligence, and we need to be treating artificial intelligence like a weapon of mass destruction. It is. It's going to be used to design new viruses. We ran a simulation in our Collapse Survivor app where people use artificial intelligence to develop better means to enrich uranium. What's the main way we enrich uranium now to make nuclear weapons? It's the same technology, centrifuges, we used in the early 1940s. Are you telling me there's been no advances in chemistry or material science since the early 1940s? Of course not. There's all kinds of advances in ways. So artificial intelligence will be misused by bad people now to develop new means to enrich uraniums and invent nuclear weapons. We ran a scenario on that on the Collapse Survivor app, and terrorists detonated 3 nuclear weapons in downtown cities across the U.S. and killed millions and shut down the U.S. because we had no idea how they were doing it, who had them, and when they were coming next. And I could spend hours fantasizing about thousands of feasible ways for AI to be misused, and odds are I won't even hit the one that AI ultimately comes up with. So someone's going to use AI to sit down and program and say, hey, North Korea, Russia, China, I want to destroy as many Americans as I can. I don't want it to be linked to me in Russia. How do I do it? They put it to work, and it'll invent some brand new way that we hadn't thought of. I mean, you're familiar with Go and how AI beat the best player of Go using a strategy that humans in thousands of years had never come up with. We didn't even understand what was going on. And by the way, even today on AI people will tell you there are all kinds of ways that AI works, and we don't know how it's working. We already don't understand AI capabilities. It's not like we have a program controlling ChatGPT. It has learned, and it's doing stuff that even the people there who've run it, developed it, will admit they don't really know how it's working. It's working, but it's doing something. So it may already be at an AGI level and not even know it yet. But anyway, the problem with AI is it's going to develop new means. For example, you just think of them logically, how they could come up. AI could develop some new chemicals, some new product that when it combines with a chemical in a water treatment plant in a municipal water system, turns into a poison that we've never had before. And maybe they tweak it and they get it to it's a poison where it doesn't kill you for 3 days. So they take it and they put it all over the place. No one's checking for this new chemical. No sensors are going to pick it up. And a Russian agent or a North Korean agent just go around putting this chemical that's not going to set off any alarms in the water sources that get into water systems. It interacts with the treating, cleaning chemicals and water purification, develops a poison, and for 3 days, everyone across the U.S. in big cities is drinking poison water. Now, the third day, over the next period of days, hundreds of millions of Americans drop dead. That's what AI is going to do. And it's not a future threat. It's a current capability of AI. Again, I worry more about the biology ones because I think that's an easier means to do it. But odds are, I'm a student of history, and if you look at history, how did World War I develop? There's things so irrational, so unpredictable. We're not going to come up with them. But you can be very confident that AI is going to be misused. But how does our government treat AI? They treat it like, you would have less regulatory burdens to develop a new cookie oven and release it and get it sold in the United States than you would launching a new AI program. Even though AI is going to be the worst weapon of mass destruction, or creating weapons of mass destruction means, than we've ever experienced, and it is going to kill off most of us, potentially all of us.
The idea that AI is able to develop such a warning biological weapon is extremely scary. Could you share more about these concerns and if there's any evidence supporting them around them?
Sure, there is evidence. Again, I'm a former intelligence officer. I'd like to get a message to Whitney Webb if I can via you or on this show. I mean,
Go for it.
I've heard her. I admire her. Agree with most of what she says.
We do as well.
I strongly disagree with her and her condemnation. She disparages Peter Thiel and Palantir and their technology quite a lot. I could tell you, as an intelligence officer, I think Peter Thiel is an American hero, and I think Palantir is a great life-saving technology. And I'd be honored to have the chance to go on a show and debate that with her live if she wants, because I think we need technology like that to catch people developing, manipulating H5N1. I don't want to go into details because I'm not a biologist, but I studied this enough that I know how I could make H5N1 mammal-to-mammal transmissible. We did it in our gain-of-function research, funded by U.S. taxpayer dollars. Not only we did succeed in making what used to be called avian or bird flu H5N1, it's in mammal populations, dozens of them all over the world. The Canadian who's got it up in Canada now may have not even gotten it from an animal. Maybe it's a mutated, and maybe it's a bioengineered variant of H5N1 he's got. But we did that research, and not only did we do the research successfully, we actually published it. How do you make H5N1 mammal-to-mammal transmissible? They use ferrets. But I think our intelligence community has been effective in blocking finding out some of those people doing it. Here's the next thing that should scare the crap out of you, and you can verify it in 10 seconds on your computer. Type in DIY bio, do-it-yourself bio. It's an on-site place. It's an internet community where they screw around with bioengineering and CRISPR technology, and they invent new creatures, new viruses, whatever they want to do. That group's out there. But I'm hoping our intelligence community is watching that, and that's where technology like Palantir can come in so we can find some of that and hopefully head it off. There was a female biologist, who wrote an article talking about overpopulation. Again, she's a biologist. In describing people, she referred to us as, quote, mammalian weeds, unquote. And that scared the crap out of me.
Yeah.
He said, yeah, she's a biologist. She knows how to use CRISPR technology. She could modify H5N1 or some other virus or create a new one through combining, the appropriate DNA and doing the work on it the hard way. There's easier ways, unfortunately, to make H5N1 human transmissible. And she could release that virus. And her argument could be, I am saving the planet. I'm saving the world, because by me killing off 3, 4, 5 billion humans now, I save other species. I stop global warming. When there's a pandemic, the good news of all this disaster is we're going to solve the global warming problem. Because when there's a collapse, the economy's not functioning. You're not creating any industrial pollution. And then billions of people die. So you're not talking about, there's a 2 or 3% reduction in global warming. There's a huge drop off because most of the human causes go away in the space of a year. So this biologist could argue that by killing 3, 4, 5 billion people, I'm saving the planet, saving other species, and since I now saved the planet, I'm saving trillions and trillions of future humans who can now be born because I've stopped the destruction of our planet. So they could make a moral argument that releasing the virus is the right thing to do. And that's a biologist. So imagine what an Al-Qaeda group, North Korea could do. And North Korea, it's a different thing than AI, but North Korea already has the capability today to destroy the United States. Today, if they wanted to, North Korea can launch a couple of their inaccurate strategic nuclear weapons on their fairly crappy, compared to ours, ICBMs, because they're not trying to take out an ICBM target or hit Washington, D.C. All they have to do is detonate a couple nuclear weapons high in the atmosphere, roughly over the United States. It could be Nebraska, it could be Missouri, it doesn't matter. A couple of them up there, and they would destroy our electric grid. The electromagnetic pulse from those detonations would take down our electric grid. We've known about this for decades. Congress has published reports with all the experts doing it. There's a great documentary you should watch. It's professionally done. It's won awards. Dennis Quaid narrates it. It's called Grid Down, Power Up. So if you think I'm exaggerating, watch this professional award-winning documentary, Grid Down, Power Up, and they will tell you that the congressionally funded study by experts over a decade ago said that an EMP attack on our grid will lead to the death of about 90% of Americans. 90% will die. Again, when the grid's down, it's not just you don't have electricity, you don't have water systems. You don't have any food production or delivery. People will start dying of water poisoning or dehydration in days. They'll be dropping dead from starvation in a month or two. And long before then, marauder groups will form and people will start killing and stealing food. And that's what this professional EMP commission, congressionally funded and delivered report did. So what did Congress do when they got the report? Not a damn thing. Why? Because utility lobbyists are some of the biggest donors, and states are afraid of hardening their grid, because it is possible to harden the grid. That documentary will explain that to you. But if you do it, you are going to raise your electric costs. So some companies are going to say, hey, I'm leaving Kansas to move to Iowa because they've got cheaper electricity now for me. So politicians were afraid. Plus, people might complain, hey, you raised my electric rates. And politicians, our career politicians, I'm a big fan of term limits, our career politicians are so focused on their reelection campaigns and donations that they don't give a crap about our survival or the wealth of the United States. They're focused on getting reelected, so utility lobbyists basically own them. And they've done nothing, absolutely nothing, to prepare our grid. And you can ask, watch the documentary, but preppers, we all know how vulnerable our grid is. And so I'm sorry, I've gotten off topic.
No worries.
So North Korea, with their crappy little nuclear force, could do it. And I know how I got into this, so I can tie it back in. So North Korea has a nuclear force that's optimized for EMP effect. When you launch a nuclear weapon, and I used to be, in addition to intelligence officer, I worked in Strategic Command, U.S. Strategic Command, Air Force Strategic Command as well. I've been to the nuclear weapon schools. And when a nuclear weapon goes off, it produces blasts. It produces thermal radiation that can start fires, produces all types of other radiation that can kill you by going through your body and destroying cells. And it produces this electromagnetic pulse. And you can modify the nuclear weapon to emphasize some effects over others. The North Korean nuclear weapons, and you asked about intelligence, that's how I got into this. From open source intelligence, reading it in newspapers, it was released that Russia help North Korea develop and optimize their nuclear weapons to have maximum EMP effect. So they are designed to do a grid attack on the United States, and it doesn't matter that we have an anti-ballistic missile system. I'm glad we've got it. It's potentially useful. All that means is that North Korea or China, though, Instead of firing 3 nuclear weapons, 3 ICBMs, they can fire 6 or 7. We might shoot down half of them, but again, 1 or 2 is all you need. So they just shoot a bunch at us at once. Our ABM system should take down some of them. It will not take down all of them, but you only need 1 or 2, and it's game over for the U.S. Most of us will die. We'll survive at Fortitude Ranch, but you likely won't, especially if you're in a big city or a suburb. You won't make it. But that's open source intelligence. So you asked me about sources of intelligence for this. It's most intelligence. I was in imagery intelligence. Whitney's talking about signals intelligence all the time. Sometimes she even says SIGINT in her shows. There's human intelligence. All these resources are out there, but I'm just telling you through open source intelligence, OSINT, that we know that lots of countries have biological weapons programs, and there's no doubt that they will use every available tool. We know China's using AI to develop weapons and technology. We're using AI to develop better weapons technology. Talk to anyone at DARPA. Are we using AI to develop better weapons? Hell yes, we are. Everyone is. So they're going to use them for bioweapons and attacks, and then brand new ways of killing us that we can't even imagine today. And yet we treat AI like, it's do whatever you want. AI should be treated like it is. It's a weapon of mass destruction. You should only be doing it in a government-controlled facility that's offline, can't be released to the outside, and we should not be rushing to treat AI like it's just any other new technology. Oh, this is just like the internet. It'll hurt some jobs, but that's the nature of progression. This is the nature of killing off most of us, most humans. That's what AI is all about.
Wow. That's extremely scary, everything that you just shared with us.
And it's not a future threat. It's not bad robots and bad computers 5 years from now when they become self-aware killing us. It's AI now being misused by bad people, terrorist groups, countries, designing more effective ways to kill. And I'm really worried about Russia. I mean, we had the Collapse Survivor app. We issue alerts on that. We do preparedness, news, and education, but the alerts, our Fortitude Ranch members, when we want to notify them that, hey, H5N1 is spreading, you need to go to Fortitude Ranch now, that alert will come out through the Collapse Survivor app.
Which
you find a lot. We talked about it a lot, but you've got to be prepared for this because the government will tell you, CDC will tell you that H5N1 is a low risk up until the time it's spreading and will kill you.
Okay, this is a huge threat that most people probably don't even know that's currently happening. And it brings me to you just discussing the Fortitude Ranch's Collapse Survivor app, which includes scenarios on AI misuse that you just provide. Can you tell us more about this app and how it really helps people to truly prepare for some of these threats?
Sure. So here's the app here. You can download on any phone. It's free for 30 days and then $10 for a year. So we wanted to make it really low cost and affordable. So we put out preparedness news. There's databases, how to grow Jerusalem artichoke, which most people have never heard of. It's actually probably the best survival food you can plant. Jerusalem artichoke. So we have prepper advice, but we also do training simulations. So this one here is the anti-AI simulation we did. And I have to be careful. One of the questions you said you might ask me is, how should we fight AI? And I got to be careful saying that because I'm basically calling for, potentially violence and attacking AI. But so we ran a scenario, and we run scenarios, training simulation over a 6-day period. And again, I was an intelligence officer. I used to write scenarios for the military. There's 2 kinds of exercise simulations you have to think of. Everyone thinks of a simulation as troops running out in the field shooting at each other, the red team and the blue team. That's a field exercise. Most simulations and training exercises we do are command post or tabletop exercises. There aren't people running around in the field. It's intelligence officers, commanders. We invent a scenario. This bad thing is happening. How are you going to react? So you play through it. When we did the first Gulf War against Saddam Hussein, we didn't have to think of the plan. We had exercised that over and over and over again. We knew the plan. because we trained on it. That's one of the reasons our military is so effective. We do massive training. We do simulations and exercises where what will we do if China does this with their ICBMs? Well, we've already done it. We've already practiced us. We've thought it through, and people played each other to figure out what's best. So in this anti-AI campaign, we wrote this simulation, and it's still on our app. We play them for 6 days live when it's a new simulation. The messages come out one at a time. And it says exercise, 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 so you don't think it's a real threat alert. But this is exactly the format we use in the military. This is a simulated scenario message, not actual news. But it gets you into thinking, and then you get information, you see disasters developing, and then you got to make a decision. So for example, for preppers, the key one is, should I leave now? The term is bug out. Should I leave my nice apartment in New York City and get the hell out of the city now, or should I wait a little bit longer? Should I go to the grocery store if there's a virus and try to get some goods? I can tell you the answer to that is no, don't do it. But you'll learn by making decisions, and then after you make a decision, and a lot of times it's probabilistic, you'll get a response. Hey, you went to the grocery store, you were lucky, you picked up 45 days of food and got out okay. A lot of people are getting a message saying you got mugged going to the grocery store, you're shot, you're bleeding out, and then 30 seconds later you get a message, sorry, you died from your gunshot wound. Or you could get a message 2 days later in the simulation saying you may have got food, but you also got the virus when you went to the grocery store. So that's what we do. So in this AI scenario, we basically had a situation where Pause AI, it's a group I actually have been working with, and some other groups got together and got people all over the world saying, we're going to stop AI since the government won't, by basically protesting. And frankly, there was some violence. I'm not saying I advocate it, but in our scenario, there was some violence against AI firms. Then they started threatening firms, saying, you have to vow you're not going to use AI, or we're going to quit, or we're going to stop buying yours. But there was a worldwide movement against AI now, against the ChatGPT applications that everyone thinks they're no threat, they're okay. Sorry, but they're all leading you down the road of AI misuse that could kill most of us. So there was a worldwide movement attacking AI, and in this case, it largely won. Now, is China and Russia and North Korea going to agree to shut down AI? No, they're not. So in this case, what happened was in our simulation, again, this is not real world, it's a simulation, it's something I would like to see happen, is basically a new alliance formed of the anti-AI countries and the countries it's the alliance we face today. Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, Syria is actually in there too, saying that we're not going to do it. And so we formed an alliance saying, we're going to fight you, we're not going to trade with you, and we're going to use nuclear weapons against you. If you ever use AI against us, we're going to nuke the hell out of you with nuclear weapons. Was how it went in this scenario. So it's a horrible situation, but I can tell you, treating AI like it's no different than a new cookie baking oven is dead wrong, and dead wrong is the right wording. It's going to lead to the destruction of most Americans. We should survive at Fortitude Ranch, but we can't shelter 1% of the population. And I'll tell you the other people who survive a collapse, and this is horrible. There's 2 other groups besides the well-prepared preppers that survive. One is the marauder groups that form, that steal, the most successful ones, they will survive. But there's an even worse group that will survive a collapse, and that's the elected officials and the politicians, because they have shelter for them at your taxpayer expense at Mount Weather and Site R, Raven Rock, FEMA facilities. They'll be taken care of. And it's official government policy. It's called continuity of government. It is the government's policy that in a collapse, they will protect the top political and government leaders, and they will do crap for the rest of us. As a matter of fact, when a disaster happens, you have less police and law enforcement to help you when you need them more. The reason is the security details for all the elected officials gets doubled or tripled. They're now protecting hospitals. There's no one to answer your call on a collapse. And preppers are well aware about this. I'm not telling preppers anything new, but most Americans don't think about prepping. That's why we've got the Collapse Survivor app. We're trying to raise awareness and honest reporting on threats. AI is not a future threat of bad robots. It's a current threat of bad people using AI to develop brilliant new means to kill people more effectively. And CDC is lying, telling you that H5N1 is a low risk. It is inevitable, according to the former director of the Center for Disease Control, that H5N1 is going to be a human-human transmissible virus, will be horrible for us, and it'll probably be a bioengineered virus. But our government lies to us, and they don't protect us, just like they didn't protect us, even though we've known for decades that the U.S. electric grid is so fragile. I call it our Achilles heel. And it's not just the people you'll kill. Our military is effectively destroyed when the civilian grid goes down. Yes, strategic command with nuclear weapons, they can strike. I hate to say it, but it's kind of like Battlestar Galactica, the old, they've got equipment that is off the grid and not as vulnerable to cyber attacks and things like that. So our nuclear weapons, strategic nuclear weapons, made us survive, but our conventional military forces are gone. Because you look at any military base, they depend on the civilian electric grid. So you can absolutely destroy the United States, kill most 90% of our population, and instantly disable U.S. conventional military power by taking down our electric grid. And I'm not revealing secrets. Known for decades, published in congressional reports, that our worthless, irresponsible government leaders of all parties for decades have done absolutely nothing to fix.
This is unbelievably disturbing. At the same time, your Survivor app sounds extremely valuable and resourceful for individuals to at least start to understand how to get involved with preparing for these type of scenarios, as you explained. You've advocated for a worldwide citizen revolt against AI and a complete ban.
Well, let's not phrase it that way. Let's just say the Collapse Survivor app simulation illustrated a worldwide movement against AI, and I have talked to some of the Pause AI leaders, but they do peaceful protests. They're not engaged about it. So I don't want them or myself to be doing that. No. But I think I will tell you this: it's absolutely morally justified because we either attack AI companies now and stop it. And if there's some violence that kills some of them, kill a relatively small amount of, I would call, guilty people, or we just wait for all of us to suffer the disaster that's going to happen with AI research by bad people, bad countries, bad terrorist groups, using AI to develop new means to kill us. To me, it's completely immoral, should be legal, but I don't want to say I'm advocating attacks on AI companies, even though our Collapse Survivor app hinted that might be a really good idea.
No, not at all. But I am interested if there were actions to be taken or anything to kind of prevent the current situation that we're currently in. Would you be able to provide any insight on?
Sure. Treat it like you're developing a chemical weapon or a nuclear weapon. You only do it in secure facilities, only authorized people can be in there. All the work is kept in there. If you're in a biological or nuclear weapons lab, you're not on the internet connected out there. So the computers need to be absolutely isolated. So yeah, we can do AI to develop new weapons that we need for defensive purposes, but only in an environment where there's no risk of the AI getting out and killing the rest of us. Open source AI and ChatGPT, all this stuff where anyone can get to it, it's insane. And people in the future, there should be some survivors, will look back at this period and think that, people and our government were absolute idiots pursuing this technology and allowing it to happen. Again, it's, don't quote me on this, Is there any better expert than Geoffrey Hinton on AI and the misuse of it? He's saying, hey, you got to stop it, and you got to stop it now. Stop allowing AI to be uncontrolled. And again, no more restrictions than a new cookie baking oven for a kid, less restrictions. You got to go through a nightmare of government regulations to put out a new kid cookie baking oven. Good luck. It'll take years. You can launch a new AI program and distribute it. No one's going to stop you. There's nothing the government will do to slow you down on that. They'll probably fund it. I'm sure you can get some government grants to do it. Just like there's government grants for gain of function. We are funding gain of function research all over the world, have been. It was done in Ukraine too, which Russia has been using for propaganda advantage. We published how to do gain-of-function research to make viruses more deadly. That's your government at work. And at the same time, they won't do a damn thing to harden our electric grid so we don't lose our electric grid from even a little North Korean attack, or a bad solar flare, or a cyber attack, or physical attacks. There's a lot of ways to take down our fragile electric grid. Our government is so irresponsible they don't do a damn thing about it. Again, don't believe me on this. Watch Grid Down, Power Up, professional documentary, and you'll understand that I'm not exaggerating one bit about our Achilles heel electric grid.
No.
And AI will also invent. I've mentioned 5 ways to take down the grid. AI will probably come up with some more if it hasn't already. That's why North Korea and China and Russia and us are putting so much military research into AI. It's a fantastic way to develop new means to kill people and destroy countries.
So how do you respond to those who are viewing AI's threats to their jobs, privacy as significant, but not as critical as the risk you've highlighted?
Well, in the collapse survival anti-AI campaign scenario, that's frankly the energy they harvested to get the movement going. So they mentioned the threats of killing people. The term is existential. It's an existential risk, meaning it's the deaths, the destruction, the damage is so horrible that human existence is set back. So it's like, when we do survive and it's over, assuming it is over, it could go on forever. But when it is over, your generation's behind. It takes you several generations to get back to where we are before it starts. It's that bad a threat. So that was mentioned in the app, but the reason people got motivated is people trying to protect their jobs. It was appealing to that interest. So it is a legitimate concern, but that's not enough. I mean, you can't just say, hey, we got to stop this technology because I'm going to lose my job. I understand the argument, and it's more powerful now because I'm going to forget the term, but the people who fought the textile mills and the Industrial Revolution in England, there's a name for them. It's escaping me now. It's in our scenario. I use it in there quite a bit. But, they were disrupted and lost jobs, but it was over a period of decades. And they're a lot easier to adapt when you could farm in your backyard and survive. AI is coming so fast with, probably hundreds of millions of jobs lost so quick that you can't recover from that. So the means that AI yields a collapse could even be a scenario where it's just so many people get unemployed so fast, causing not just a recession, but rebellions to kick off, that causes a collapse. We track 50 different, we call them trigger events that could lead to a collapse. A solar flare taking down the electric grid. A country like North Korea, Russia, or China launching nuclear weapons to take down our grid. Natural H5N1, there's a lot of them that we track. But the point is, almost anything can lead to a collapse, and there's other ways we don't track that could lead to it. We have a probability of collapse model. I developed it about a decade ago. I presented it at the Military Operations Research Society, and it's a fairly simple model, but it first looks at what's the probability that this bad event occurs. Because the bad event could occur, but then it doesn't lead to the next step, which is it spreads, and the job loss and the loss of law and order spreads to a wide area, and that leads to a collapse. And we survey experts. A lot of them are intelligence officers. Some of them are biologists, doctors, different scientists. And we just recently updated our model, and the estimate we came up with is, I'll grab the slide for you. We came up with an estimate, I believe it's 16 to 57% annual likelihood today of a collapse disaster. I'll send you the slide on that.
Well, yes.
And it's because of these trends right here. The destructive power of an individual is going through the roof. AI is going to make that worse. We are economically interdependent. We have got a very fragile economy. And then we have individuals who just can't survive. If the grocery stores go down, they can't plant food. They can't hunt. Or they don't have access to it. So you combine all that, and again, AI makes the technology threat works, and you've got a population that's very, very vulnerable to a collapse. And the problem with AI is, I've been tracking 50 threats. AI is going to invent 1,000 new threats I'd never thought of or other people haven't thought of, and we can't defend against things we're not aware of as a threat. So we have entered what I call the age of collapse. And I've got a video on that I can send you a link to. And this is an age where we're going to have catastrophic events that do shut down our economy, lead to a loss of law and order, And they're going to happen with high probability. And as soon as we recover from one, there may be another one that hits us, within a year or two after that, until we adjust to deal with it.
I remember in this conversation you mentioned Pause AI. Have you collaborated with groups like Pause AI to address these urgent threats that AI is currently happening and the misuse of AI?
Yeah, again, I don't want to get the group in trouble, but I
No,
have
no,
had some
not at all.
emails with the leader of the Pause. I'm forgetting his name right now, and I'd mispronounce it. He's in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands, and it's an international group. It's a really good one, and they schedule protest events. But I've argued with him that he needs to, one, emphasize the current. He agrees with me. He's not one who thinks it's just bad robots in the future. He agrees AI is definitely a deadly threat now and needs to be controlled and stopped now. But we haven't actually collaborated to get anything done yet. It's just been exchanging emails. That's why we released the scenario on the Collapse Survivor app, is we're hoping to get more people aware of it and, hopefully get someone in the Trump administration. We're also I'm working on preparing a detailed list of recommendations and a strategy for the Musk, Ramaswamy, Trump Department of Government Efficiency movement. They're trying to cut $2 trillion in federal spending, and that's great. And I'm giving them some ideas to do it. Some of them pretty controversial, like bringing back battlefield nuclear weapons, announcing that the U.S. will not defend Taiwan. The United States should not be offering any kind of protection guarantee for Taiwan. The money reason is, that means we got to put more bases and more money over there. We're trying to have a whole shift to Asia strategy. But the more important reason is, if we do defend Taiwan and China will attack it, there's no doubt about it. They've been telling us for 50 years plus that they're going to take Taiwan back. They consider it their island, and they have a powerful argument in that regard. But there's a scenario that, people in my area, I used to work at the Institute for Defense Analyses, worked in the Department of Defense in the senior executive service, as well as being an intelligence officer. And I can tell you, we do a lot of Taiwan-China war scenarios. And the problem is, if we get into an attack, if China attacks Taiwan and we try to defend them, I can tell you what Taiwan is going to do. They're not going to limit it to conventional weapons where we have an advantage. They're going to escalate to strategic attacks. And we did a scenario on that. Again, the Collapse Survivor app, this scenario is called China-Taiwan Nuclear Chicken.
Yeah.
And the reason we picked that game, if you know the game of chicken, you may not, but the reason we picked that is that's basically all China has to do. Is they launch several nuclear weapons at the U.S. and say, okay, we told you to back down. You didn't back down. It's our people. It's our internal civil war. You've ignored us. We're launching 6, 10 nuclear weapons at you. Your ABM system may be able to shoot down all of them. Fine. We're demonstrating our resolve and our commitment that you better back down. Only in this scenario, they launched 6 or 10. I forget the number now. The ABM system got a lot of them, not all of them. They took down the U.S. electric grid, and there was a collapse disaster. But if we try to defend Taiwan, China will use nuclear weapons. It'll be an attack on the U.S. that could take down our electric grid, in which case 90% of us die, according to the government study and Commission's estimate, and it's a disaster. So I'm recommending to Musk and Ramaswamy that we announce that we are not going to defend Taiwan. We're not going to risk a nuclear war over that. We should not. And we've got to make some cuts in the military too, and we got to change our strategy. AI is going to develop all kinds of great new weapons technologies. Our strategy ever since World War II is we're going to have the best conventional weapons technology in the world, and we have. And it's bankrupting the country. We're up to $1 trillion annually almost. It's like 800, 900 trillion now. It'll be $1 trillion if it keeps on at this pace very soon. And we've got, the debt number is not the 36 trillion you read about. The actual honest U.S. debt is over 100 trillion. They don't count Social Security or pension debt that they owe. They lie on the debt figure that they give out. Truth in Accounting puts out honest assessments of what our national debt is, and it's much higher. So I'm giving them a lot of recommendations, but on defense, we need to give up on this strategy. We're going to have all the best conventional weapons superiority. We need to give up on defending Taiwan. We need to bring back short-range, low-yield battlefield nuclear weapons that we can use so we can defend our troops that are deployed overseas. And we need to do things like attack the perverted triangle. There's the iron triangle is the political science term for elected officials and their committees and the lobbyists and the businesses. And this evil iron triangle passes laws to pass businesses. And that's true. But the bigger problem we've got is what I call the perverted triangle. The professional career politicians, the government bureaucrats, and the lawyers. They are the ones who really work together to ignore our constitutional limits. The 9th and the 10th Amendments of the Constitution, glad to get into this on another show with you, but they protect our natural rights and they limit the federal government. The 10th Amendment is crystal clear. The federal government can only pursue programs or levy taxes on the specific enumerated written items that are in the Constitution that we can do. Government can do national defense, foreign policy, run the post office, settle disputes between the states, not regulate the economy, but settle economic and trade disputes between the states. They can't do health care. They can't do Social Security. All these programs are completely illegal. But in 1937, FDR threatened the Supreme Court with packing, threatened to force them into retirement, and other threats as well. And the Supreme Court, in a famous 1937 case, Helvering versus Davis, basically erased the U.S. constitutional limits to government in a ruling, a complete. And again, don't take my word for it. The best book to read on this is Charles Murray, By the People, Taking Back Our Liberty. I've missaid the title, but if you do tell Charles Murray and By the People, he's laid out, he describes that case. Roger Pilon at the Cato Institute has also described how the perverted triangle erased natural rights. You guys have mentioned the right to privacy a lot on your program.
Yes.
You know where the right to privacy comes from? Is it protected in the Constitution? I'm putting you on the spot.
No, you tell me.
So if it is in the Constitution protected, you don't see the word privacy in there, but it is protected. It's the 9th Amendment to the Constitution. And the 9th Amendment, which was pushed by the Anti-Federalists, George Mason is one that everyone knows, but the most important one, I think, was Mercy Otis Warren, a female who was, I would say, one of the founding fathers. She helped get the revolution going. She was in Massachusetts. She helped spark the revolution. She wrote the first history of the United States. And she was an anti-federalist. She opposed the Constitution until they got the Bill of Rights. So the 9th Amendment says, even if we don't list your right, free speech, right to bear arms, all these rights, even if it's not listed, you still have natural rights that are above the Constitution, above the laws, and cannot be interfered with by government. That's the 9th Amendment. And unfortunately, the Supreme Court completely ignores the 9th Amendment. That's why government today in the United States can do whatever they want. That's why the United States today, we're not just no longer the land of the free. The United States today is the country with the highest per capita imprisonment of any other country in the world. We're the land of the prisoners, controlled by our illegal, unconstitutional government, violating whatever they want to do, including your right to privacy. Now, they mention the right to privacy sometimes, if they want to, in Roe versus Wade. The right to privacy, which is protected by the 9th Amendment, was invoked there. But 99% of the time, the federal government, state governments, local governments, they do whatever the hell they want. American government is not rule of the majority. It doesn't mean if you have representation in government, government can do whatever you want to. The American Revolution was fought. The U.S. Constitution was designed to protect natural rights, your rights to use your private property as you want, have privacy, do whatever you want to do, the right to be left alone, as George Will described it. That's what American government is all about. And the two political parties long ago abandoned it. The Democrats are the worst. The Republicans are usually partners in crime. The only political party that pays any attention to that is the Libertarian Party, but they get no respect or attention from the media. And unfortunately, as a result, our government, we're ruled today by the perverted triangle of career politicians. We need term limits. I'll recommend that to the Musk Ramaswamy group. Otherwise, they're not going to get $2 trillion in cuts because all the elected officials, they're not going to allow cuts in their programs and their pork. that they use to buy votes. If you don't get term limits, if you don't fight the perverted triangle, you're not going to cut $2 trillion. And even if you did some budget gimmicks to get it for a year or two, it's all going to come back. I mean, Reagan had the Grace Commission. You've heard Donald Trump talk about we got to drain the swamp.
Yeah.
Those are the exact words Ronald Reagan used back in the 1980s with his Grace Commission. We're going to drain the swamp.
Yes.
We're going to reform government. They came up with lots of great cost-cutting measures, but the perverted triangle beat them. They won against Reagan, and they'll win against Trump too unless he gets term limits and fights the perverted triangle. So we're working on a whole list of recommendations for budget cuts, but they get into this collapse survival issue too. We need to start putting our military focus on homeland survival. We need to increase the Army National Guard, not with tanks, not with expensive weapon systems, with people and just small arms, low-cost small arms, so they could do crowd control, distribute food, fight marauder groups. That's what we need. We need to stop trying to be the world's policeman. And in the age of AI, we can't do that anymore, even if we wanted to. Even if we wanted to put $5 trillion into military spending, we just can't do it anymore. AI is going to develop brilliant ways that in one day they've developed a way to defeat the F-35 fighter that we spend billions and billions of dollars to buy. Submarines now are undetectable. AI will be used eventually to find out that, there's this little photoplasm organism in the water, and it turns out that it shift changes some little teeny bit whenever there's a lot of metal near it. And now because of that, I can detect submarines all over the ocean. So forget about technology saving the United States. It isn't going to work anymore. AI is going to be our downfall in so many ways, and yet our government is promoting AI and not doing a goddamn thing to control it, or to get us warned so we can protect ourselves and prepare.
Yeah. Well, before we wrap up, Dr. Drew, what advice would you give to our listeners who want to become more self-reliant or get involved in addressing the challenges posed by AI and other emerging technologies? What advice do you have?
Well, the first one is get prepared. So the Collapse Survivor app is a pretty easy thing you can do. It's going to cost you a lot more money to start stockpiling supplies, to find a bug out location to get prepared, but at least start by getting educated, and then you'll get the warnings, because sometimes that may be all you need. If you get the warning, because we will give you warnings long before the government does through the Collapse Survivor. If you get out of New York City before the rest of before the official government alerts happen, and the whole, the place starts going to hell, you could survive from that. And it could be that a collapse, they're not all going to last for years. Some may be over within a matter of days and weeks, and you can survive those things just by getting a head start. So get the Collapse Survivor app. Do not trust government. And, I hear that on your program all the time. Whitney is often warning people that, hey, these people are not telling you the truth. That's why I like your program. So don't trust the government warnings. Again, the CDC telling you that H5N1 is low risk is an absolute irresponsible, grotesque, dead wrong lie. And then just get prepared. If you want to get involved in a movement like Pause AI to stop AI, I would encourage you to do that too. But it's going to take a lot more than protest. People aren't going to give up the billions they can make from AI, uncontrolled right now, and unregulated. So it's going to have to be a fight if we're really going to stop AI. So I'd encourage people to stop AI, get involved in that to the degree they can, but not going to advocate violence officially, even though our Collapse Survivor app did have a scenario where the people did start attacking AI companies and people using AI, and that was the way they succeeded in stopping it in the app simulation.
Wow. Well, that was great advice. Lastly, how can people learn about Fortitude Ranch or get in touch with you?
Our website is fortranch.com. If you Google, you'll find us all over the place. And just in the last few months, New York Times, New Yorker Magazine has covered Fortitude Ranch. We've been around for 10 years now. Again, great locations, run largely by military vets and some former law enforcement as well. So it's easy to find information on Fortitude Ranch. And once you Google, you'll find our website, and then you can get in touch there. But I'll admit, we were affordable for the middle class, but it is fairly expensive. Most people aren't going to be able to afford Fortitude Ranch, but you can at least afford the $10 app, less than you'll probably pay going to Starbucks, And that gives you a year of education and warnings via your phone.
That's amazing. Well, Dr. Miller, thank you so much for joining us today. Your insights into the urgent threats posed by AI, misuse, and how we can start preparing for a lot of these scenarios is truly enlightening, and it's a very thought-provoking conversation. So I thank you so much for joining our show, and also thank you for your services and all of this unbelievable insight for us.
Well, thank you. And tell Whitney I do challenge her to debate Peter Thiel and Palantir's merits if she wants to do that.
Well, we'll have to have you come back on for another episode so we can discuss a little further about that, because I would like to talk to you about that topic specifically too.
Okay, thank you very much.
Of course. And thank you to everyone listening to Only the Savvy. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. We'd love to continue this conversation. Remember to stay informed, engage, stay savvy. Until next time.